We started this morning with the exciting panel about literary translation and artificial intelligence. And we are continuing now with panel 4, gathering data on literary translation markets and mapping grant opportunities. This panel will be moderated by Sinéad McKay from Literature Ireland, and she will introduce the other panelists. I hope you all enjoyed this other session.
Good morning, everybody. It's wonderful to be here. And because we have such a large panel, I'm going to say this once and ask all the speakers not to say it, because I know I'm saying it on their behalf. I'd like to congratulate CEATL, Francesca, and Cécile, and all their team, for a really amazing conference. I have to say, in my 30 years in the business, I don't think I've ever attended such a stimulating and thought-provoking conference. So let's We have 7 speakers to talk about data collection, gathering data on literary translation markets, and mapping grant opportunities. Now, someone at a panel yesterday talked about how literary translation isn't always the sexiest of topics. Well, I think data collection is even less sexy. Charles Babbage said, "Errors using inadequate data are much less than those using no data at all." And I think, given the diversity of projects and programs of non-governmental organizations, of governmental organizations, of translators associations who are all involved in this business, we really can't formulate policy without good data. One of the problems with collecting good data is that you need to have a methodology that compares like with like. You can't compare apples and oranges, or as a Latvian colleague said to me yesterday, apples and pears, because even that concept seems to vary from one language to another. So without wasting any more time, I'm going to ask our first speaker, Enrico Turrin, Deputy Director of the Federation of European Publishers, to speak to us. Enrico began working as an economist at the FEP, and in 2012, his role extended to include Deputy Director. He's going to talk to us about some very interesting data that the FEP has been gathering for the past couple of years. He's working with a funded program called ALDUS Up, which has grown in strength and which might be a model for the future. So I pass the floor to Enrico Turrin.
Thank you very much. Hi everyone, welcome. Right off the bat, because I've been in the audience so far, fundamental question, can you hear me? Okay, that's great. That's a good start. So, yeah, there's no really great way to make this sexy, but I'm going to try to make it at least as the least painful as possible. We're talking about data. For me, it's something very important. I'm very passionate about that, and it's one of the main things I do at the Federation of European Publishers. Actually, in the next slide, I'll spend a few seconds in the next slide to tell you who we are, just, where I come from. We are a European federation. Our members are 29 national associations of publishers of books, journals, learning material from all over Europe. We've also given a Ukrainian publisher guest status to give a little help as best we can, given the situation they've been in the last couple of years. We've been around, we're based in Brussels. Our main occupation is to pester the European Commission so that they treat the book sector properly. We've been around for 50 years, a bit more actually, not me personally, I hope you noticed that. But yeah, we've been around a while, and we represent indirectly more than 6,000 publishers all over Europe. So, in the next slide, we get to a bit of context. This project, ALDUS Up, consists in creating it's co-funded by the European Commission, a Creative Europe program, and it has created a network of book fairs all over Europe. But one of the tasks of the project was to improve our understanding of phenomena such as exchange of translation rights and survey of reading habits. I hope I don't need to tell you about the importance of having decent knowledge and good data about translation rights. What we've been trying to do, apart from stimulating the gathering of data, was also to come up with a way of making the data comparable. Because you have, precisely as Sinéad was saying, the two main objectives: find more data and make them comparable, which is why the exercise done within the framework of the project consisted in analyzing the existing surveys that were carried out and then coming up with a synthesis, so a possible methodology that would at the same time be compatible with the existing ones and be usable by other countries to collect the same kind of data. And we also made available an online infrastructure to facilitate taking part in this kind of service. So in the next slide, quickly, I'll tell you about the methodology, how the survey was conducted. So the data are not groundbreaking, but again, it's not a sector where you have huge surprises. So the figures themselves won't surprise you, and I'll go quick about them. It's really to stimulate rather the debate. We carried out the exercise last year based on data from 2022, still relatively recent. We involved 8 countries, 2 of them, Germany and France, quite big markets, the second and third biggest markets in, actually the first and the third biggest markets in Europe, already carried out their own surveys. And then we were able to involve Austria, Italy, Latvia, Lithuania, Portugal, and Romania, who then joined the exercise. The survey was carried out online. Data were elaborated by the research department of the Italian Publishers Association. And of course, there are still limitations. One is that comparability with the existing surveys is not 100%. We'll see there are a couple of gaps. And there's also a matter with the size of the sample, which brings us back to the fact that we need to encourage everyone who has the possibility to actually contribute and get involved in this kind of surveys. So in the next slide, we go straight to the data. Well, this is still, let's say, the metadata. You see again the countries involved and the number of respondents. Already you see very varying sizes of the sample, of course proportionate to an extent to the size of the markets, but again, there's some way to go for a more comprehensive kind of exercise. In the next slide, we start looking a bit at the results. Again, you'll definitely receive everything. I'm not going to read numbers. I'll kill you if I do that. Just a few points that come out from the various questions that we had. So here we have sales by the publishers in the countries to foreign publishers and purchase. Again, you see for France and Germany, we only have data about sales. What we notice is the huge disproportion between big and small markets, with France, Italy, and Germany in the thousands of sales to foreign publishers. I made sure it's clear these are logarithmic scales, in case you were wondering, because 6 and 12,000 wouldn't be comparable otherwise. So that's why it might look weird. It's a logarithmic scale. But anyway, thousands of sales of rights from publishers in the biggest markets in Europe, which is still pretty good. And then the other countries clocking in the dozens or handfuls of sales, but it also again depends on the size of the sample. And again, well, with Italy, thousands of purchases, but tens or low hundreds of purchases from the other countries in the sample. Next, we have the average purchases and sales per publisher, which at least takes into account the size of the sample. And still we see in terms of sales that even per publisher, the biggest markets are much more active or much more present in the outgoing market. Whereas for purchases, there's a mix. Even some of the smallest markets have publishers that are very active in acquiring translations rights. So we'll see there is a bit of an imbalance. In the next, we see instead the importance of literary agents. At least 2/3 of respondents, and in some cases all of them, say that they rely on literary agencies or agents in order to buy and sell translation rights, just an element to take into account. Next, these are the main genres. Again, here the basic takeaway is that fiction, children, young adult, and comics represent more than half of the total sales of rights. Again, I'm sure this doesn't come as a surprise to any of you. Then the different countries, you can see a different weight, for example, of children or comics. There are countries that have a big tradition, such as France, of comic publishing, but also Lithuania in this case. But again, so fiction, young adult, comics, mostly the biggest areas for which we sell publishing translation rights, And in the next slide, same scene from the point of view of purchases. Once again, fiction, in many cases dominant, a lot of children's book rights are bought for translation. And then, okay, there are some outliers, such Portugal. There's a stronger presence of non-fiction than in other cases, but by and large, once again, fiction and children and young adult are the main areas for which we buy rights. In the next, we start looking at the areas, the geography of the exchange of translation rights, and we see, well, again, no surprises. Europe is the main destination, but many countries are exploring, trying to get into the Asian markets, and many, I'm sure, would like to enter the North American market, but for most of publishers, it's not at all easy. When we look in the next at the purchase of translation rights from different areas, obviously, once again, for European publishers, Europe is by far the most important. Asia is present, but there you see again the disproportion. North America is much bigger a source of translation rights than a destination of translation rights. In the next, it's a summary of this imbalance. For the new countries, those that don't have already a survey, only 10% of sales of rights go towards the main English-speaking markets, UK and North America, but 50% of purchases come from those countries, and that has obviously consequences in terms of the demand for translations. But again, you must know that much better than me. France sells 7% of its rights to those countries, and Germany just 4%. In the next one, I think last bit of data, co-editions are very common, especially in the biggest markets, and it seems that they are especially used in the field of children and young adult. And then really one last minute, or not even that, in the last slide, if I remember correctly, to indeed come back to the beginning. So there is a big need for data. We kind of got a glimpse of the phenomenon. We can see that there is a gap between the biggest markets and the small ones, both in absolute terms and also in their access to foreign markets. A dominance, again, not surprising, of the English-speaking markets that sell a lot of rights to the rest of the countries in Europe, but don't buy anywhere near as many. There's an attempt by European publishers from all countries to diversify and try to maybe penetrate markets that are a bit more more penetrable. Like there's this attempt to go towards Asia to sell rights. And again, the importance of data, because in order to understand a phenomenon, you have to measure it. And if you want to improve the situation, you have to know where you start from. You have to be able to measure the impact of your interventions. You have to be able to know where you need to intervene. And the only way to do that is thanks to data. We keep pushing from our side the publishers to participate as much as possible, but I invite anyone everyone here who has a bit of leverage in the let's provide data to get on board, because there's nothing to lose and only to gain from sharing data on this and trying to improve things. And the last thing, I'd like to take the opportunity, because I've never seen so many translators at once. Thank you all, directly and indirectly, for allowing me to read hundreds of books that otherwise I would never have had the possibility. Keep it up.
So Enrico, what would you like to do in the future with this research?
Well, the research is there as a model, and we want to reproduce it, we want to expand it, we want it to be the basis for more countries to participate, for more publishers to participate, for maybe at the institutional level, someone to take it up and one way or another, to each, according to their own means and possibilities, push for it to be used more, because again, only data will tell us what we need to do and whether what we do is working. We can involve national libraries who should know about all the literature that is published in a country, also where it comes from. We can involve agencies that do market surveying, because again, they must have in their metadata the original language of the books that end up caught in the market surveys. I think there's a bunch of players who have data that can be relevant, and it wouldn't cost them anything to, or very little, to contribute to increase everybody's knowledge about the phenomenon.
Is it time sensitive? I mean, how long did it take to collate the data? Because it'll go out of date very fast.
Yeah, it's times, well, it takes time, but mostly to convince the people. Then once you convince the people, providing the data doesn't take that long, and at this level of quantities, let's say, the analysis doesn't take that long either. It's really most in the preparation and advocacy part.
Well, I hope it continues to flourish and to expand. We're going to pass to our next speaker. Thank you, Enrico. We're going to pass to our next speaker, Robert Alagjozovski, and I'm sure I'm butchering your name, Robert, I apologize. Robert is a writer, a translator, a researcher, a literary critic, and has an MA in comparative literature. This, as I mentioned earlier, I really think this conference is extraordinary in the range of speakers it has brought together under one very impressive roof. In 2017, Robert was appointed as Minister of Culture in the Republic of North Macedonia, and he then served as National Coordinator for Interculturalism, Cultural Development and Interministerial Cooperation. So we now have a former Minister of Culture contributing to the debate. But Robert's here today specifically to talk about research that he did recently in the Balkans in relation to translation. I'll give you the floor, Robert.
Thank you. Thank you to CEATL for inviting me to this conference. I'm very proud to speak about this project because this was one of the projects I couldn't participate in fully because I was in a position in the government. But then the partners of the project asked me if I could be an author of a translations report survey from my own country. So I very gladly accepted that, because working for the government and the Ministry of Culture, I was in charge or co-coaching, let's say, the creation of the strategy for development of culture and other strategies and other policy actions. And all the time the question was, how are we going to do analysis of the state of play, and what will be the baseline indicators, and out of this, how are we going to create these actions to be evidence-based actions and not just a partial impressions which often is the case with our countries. So this is a project of different partners. Next slide, please. And it is the composition of partnership is different. So there are publishing houses, but also we have the municipality of Podgorica, so whoever was willing to take part. The problem with the Western Balkan countries is that we are, let's say, more or less exception to the general rules how the things are done in the rest of Europe. So that we have a clearly lack of evidence and collection of data and collection of other kind of facts. So not even to speak about the proper interpretation and analysis of these facts. So that actually quite a large number of people in each country theme participated, and we included also librarians, and even we consulted very often people from the ministry, people from the publisher associations, in order to come with as realistic facts as possible, because as I said, there is no specific, so if you ask the Statistical Bureau of North Macedonia or any of this country, there is not a place where we can go and just see what was done. So there is a problem with data collection, and this is the main situation. So let's go to the next slide to introduce you more about this project. So the project has three pillars, this data-driven research, but also we have academies for literary managers, and then internship placement in other European literary organizations. So I'm going to only present you the mapping of the 6 reports. So this is a synthesis of each individual country reports, and this mapping you can find downloadable on the site, and this is the PowerPoint that is presented is just the main features. So that in the next slide please, I will tell you about the tendencies in each of these countries, and then also try to interpret what is going on. So we can see that, and the countries are more or less the same size, with Montenegro being the smallest country, and then Serbia being the biggest, but more or less they are here around 2 million to 3 million people. So, and then these countries are important because all this period, as you know, since the split of Yugoslavia and the fall of communism, they were going into different kind of crises and transitions. So even in the rest of Europe, there was a hype for authors that were coming from the region, because there was assertion that this traumatic period also created extraordinary literature, which is actually true. So we can see that the translations of Albanian books into other languages, the peak was like in 2019, more than 70 books were translated. And then actually, I guess this is because of the pandemic, that in every graph that you are going to see, we have a tendency for diminishing the translations that were approved by the different funding bodies and institutions. And the most popular recipient languages of the Albanian authors are Macedonian and Italian. And here we can see that actually this graph of the frequently translated languages and countries are more or less... please, next slide. Yeah, it's here, so that we can see that it also refers the communication and the cultural ties that exist with the society. So Albania having a close social ties with Italy, it's not surprised that Italian translation into Italian are one of the frequent. And this graph shows that usually the neighboring region is quite present, but also, let's say, what is also European policy, this translation into the major European languages, like the French and the German, is not very bad. In Albanian situation is that there is no much more translation into English, let's say. Next slide, please. And the most translated authors here are, of course, Ismail Kadare, who has gained his glory already in the 70s and 80s, so we could consider him as a modern classic. But then we have few authors which are contemporary and who have built their reputation just recently, as it is Arjan Leka, Luan Starova, or Bashkim Shehu, let's say. The interesting aspect with Luan Starova, and it is that he's really a border author. He was born in the Albanian part of Lake Ohrid, and then he lived for the rest of his life in North Macedonia, and he was a Macedonian ambassador to France, so that he is also interested as kind of bilingual author belonging to both communities. Next slide, please. Then in Bosnia-Herzegovina, we can see the similar trend of reducing the number of translation, but let's say their peak is around 40-45 translations in a year. And in the next slide, we will see that actually English is the most frequent target language, followed by Slovenian and German. There are huge diaspora of Bosnian and Herzegovinan in these countries as well. But then also we can see that the neighboring languages, Italian, Macedonian, Turkish, Hungarian, are also present on the list. Next slide. And then among the most translated authors is, of course, Ivo Andrić, who is another classic, but also a border author, and there is a dispute if we can call him an author from Bosnia or author from Croatia or from Serbia. And Meša Selimović is a similar classic, but then we have Miljenko Jergović and Dževat Karahasan, Faruk Šekić, and Andrej Nikolaidis as the authors who are mostly translated. At this moment, I would introduce this fact that the winners of EU Prize for Literature are always among the most translated authors, so that this mechanism of the European Union, and then thanks to the rules of automatic points at the Creative Europe Literary Stand, is much helping these winners of the award to be translated in the other European languages. And then out of it, there is another spillover effect, that once you are translated in 9 languages, you will easily come to 10 others, not necessarily from the closed EU region, so that it is really a great booster of being translated. In Kosovo, we have a trend, so again in absolute numbers it is not big, but it is increasing. And then again, next slide please. Yeah, and next slide. Yeah, so that the Italian, but also English and French and Swedish is the most frequent. And among the authors, next slide please, it is that the drama author Jeton Nezirai, who is one of the best, in my opinion, young drama authors, not only from the region but in Europe, is that very much translated. Although these are drama texts, but they are written in a great literary quality. So even as drama texts, they are interesting for readers. And then we have authors like Pajtim Statovci or Ekrem Basha. In Montenegro, the line goes, next slide please, up and down, and this is less than 20 translations. And here we can again see, next slide please, with Montenegro, that English is the most present, and then it again comes with the neighboring languages. So we can already said that the neighboring countries are the biggest recipients of the translated literatures. And then I can also introduce this fact now. Very often there is a discrepancy between the cultural and social field, so the interest of the citizens, and then what is the official country policies. So within the Balkan states, there are always these political tensions. So Serbia and Kosovo, Albania and Serbia, North Macedonia and Bulgaria, Serbia and Bulgaria. So there are all kinds of political disputes. But actually, it is proven that the publishing sector, the cultural sector, is opposing these trends, and they are following different policies and different curiosities. That's what the high politics is giving us. We must say also that in regards of the publishing houses, Istros books from London and let's say other German or Italian publishing houses, this is the trend that they are interested in presenting the writers from the region. So this is kind of extra devotion. Is not the logic of market and business, as Enrico was presented. It's purely editorial policy, and I would say even personal missions of the owners of the publishing, who have their passion and their vision to promote certain kind of authors coming from certain parts of the country. Yeah. And next slide, please. Again, as I said, in the Montenegrin case, the EU prize winners like Andrei Nikolaidis, Ognjen Spasic, and Alexander Becanovic are the most translated, and but also another contemporary authors. In North Macedonia, we have the peak of 60 books, and then slowly coming down to 30 in the period after that. And again, Serbian and Bulgarian are the most important translation. Next slide, please. Yeah. Next slide for North Macedonia. And next slide, please. So again, the contemporary authors like Lidia Dimkovska and Rumena Bužarovska, who are very frequent in the literary scene in the region, that also make them popular, and there is a kind of interest and demand by translators, but also by the markets for their books. Božin Pavlovski is another case of an author who is actually following the interest of the diaspora. So there is large Macedonian diaspora in countries like Australia and Canada, and then he himself as an author really invested that he is present and translated into English and being popular there. Next slide, please.
1 minute, Robert.
Yeah, okay. So then just to finish, we gave a lot of recommendations to the policy makers to include, but the demand of the people who are involved into the cultural field is that the country, let's say, should support. There are granting schemes on several layers. So there are funds that supports the translation into foreign languages within the ministries or the agency, but also there is a regional initiative like Traduki, And of course, there is this literary strength of Creative Europe. So actually, here we don't have problem with financial support, but very often with other players. Translators play a crucial role to be intermediaries between the foreign publishing houses and the authors. And in several cases, the literary agents who are not quite often used by the authors or the publishing houses in the region can do a great role in further promotion and make these authors being translated. Also here, thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Robert. That was fascinating. I haven't heard the term border author before, but perhaps when we're talking about literary translation, every author is a border author. It's not the sense you had of the word, but it's a lovely concept and term. I'm going to move quickly to Julià Florit from Institut Ramon Llull. Julià is a project manager there, and he's here today to talk about ENLIT. ENLIT is a network of literary translation agencies who fund translation, who move at a national level their literatures to other countries. It grew out of a network called the Good Fazant network that was led by the agencies, the funding agencies in Amsterdam and Flanders and Dublin, and had meetings in Dublin, Amsterdam and Budapest with support from the Frankfurt Book Fair as well, and which is now ENLIT. And Julià is going to tell us all about some interesting research he's just done in relation to our members. Julià Florit.
Thank you, Sinéad, and thank you, Cécile and CEATL team for welcoming us and having us here. It's a real pleasure. As Cécile said, I'm representing here ENLIT as a board member, and as Alexandra, my colleague, Alexandra Buchler, introduced you the network yesterday, so I'm going to go and jump some slides and go straight to the point. That's basically our grants that we have. Next slide, please. Next. So here you have some of the members of the network. We are 29 members. Next slide. From 22 countries in Europe. Next one. But let me say that the network is always growing. Year after year, and the general meeting in Frankfurt, we are welcoming new members that are missing on the network. We are 29, but we could be much more. And so important countries that give grants as well are not there. So if anybody's interested in that, let me know later. Okay, next slide, please. Next one. And the next one. So I know you cannot see the numbers here. Don't worry, I will share the summary later. But as you can imagine, as you can see as well, the 29 ENLIT members are really different in terms of budget, representing a different size of languages, and not all of them give support to grants. But we all care about the promotion of our literature abroad. Next slide, please. So here you have that the whole network last year, we support the translation of 4,000 books into other languages with 9.7 million euros awarded. I know I think these numbers are quite impressive, but let me say that as only a part of them, we need to add here the numbers that No Pasquale mentioned yesterday from the European Commission, for example, but also the numbers of other organisms in Europe that give grants, like the Italian government or the Spanish Ministry of Culture. You can see the difference between the number of grants awarded by institutions comes from 50 grants or 500, and the budgets are really different as well. The medium size of book is 2,000 euros per book that we award. Next slide, please. Almost all institutions support the translation into all languages, but last year we supported the translation into 50 languages. That means not only Europe, but also the rest of the world. As you can imagine, there is no translators into all languages, so only as exception, some of our members accept bridge languages, not all of them. We know this is not the best practice, and we are really sorry about that, and we are always trying to change that, organizing workshops and seminars to try to find new translators in this combination of languages. Next slide, please. I'm sorry, the previous one, sorry. Here you can see the criteria. To award a grant, there's different commissions that decide the amount of money that we can give. So we consider all of these different criteria to decide the amount of money that we can give. Next slide, please. All genres are supported, of course, and more or less in the same order that you can see here. Also, as Enrico mentioned before, fiction and children's are on the top. And on the graphic novels, even if in some countries it's really important, in our cases it's not on one of the most translated or awarded. Next slide, please. But as you can imagine, we not only give grants on translation books, but also into others. Here you have the list, and even if it says that 24 million euros are awarded altogether on these grants, I must say that the data are really, really difficult to compare here. So I'm not going to show you any more numbers or detailed numbers about all of these grants, because some of them are cross, meaning we support illustration in different ways, maybe included in translation grants or maybe as a specific grant on illustration. We support printing costs with a specific grant by genres, for example, or also in the translation grant. We also support the promotion of a book, and that's really important because it's not only for publishers, but also for organizers. So bookshops, libraries, festivals can also apply for this kind of grant to invite authors to the festival, of course, but also to organize any kind of online activity or support marketing campaigns, etc. On the other side of the column, we can see that we also have grants for sample translation. That is something really, really important for us, that we see that, of course, to convince an international publisher to translate a book, they need to read something. So we support as well that, and also reader reports in some cases. It's not that common, but in some cases as well. Another important grant is the travel grant for authors. And when I say authors, I include, of course, translators and also illustrators and anthologists in some cases. And finally, I just wanted to mention the fellowships that we organize, that we invite publishers and translators to our markets to visit our countries to learn about our literature. So we give some talks, we make some presentations, we introduce them to publishers, agencies, journalists, authors, and it has been a really good way to promote our languages abroad. Next slide, please. But as we are here in a translation conference, I wanted to sum up or to show you the list of tools that we have at ENLIT for translators. Some of them I already mentioned, but just to mention again, it's like translation grant, of course. We supported the part of the cost of the translation. The promotion grant, as I mentioned before. Sample grants, reader reports, travel grants, where the translator can be involved as well in the promotion of a book. We have also mentorships. That's quite important. We help new translators to work on that domain with the help of established translators. Robert mentioned just now the European Literary Prize, that it's really important to make the literature known abroad. And that's why as well that some of our members has prizes for translators. So the best translation of the year or the career translator. Next slide, please. We also organize, and this is really, really important, that I would say the most important thing we do is the translation workshops and translating programs. Of course, to work on the language, but also to work on the professionalization of the translators, to give you tools to negotiate, to know how to deal with a contract, also to show you what is being published in our market, so you can learn also about our literatures. Almost 20 of our members organize this kind of programs. Something also important is between us, we are in charge as well of the teaching our languages at the universities. So these kind of workshops and training programs are also sometimes involved done at the universities. We also have residencies for translators, the best way to be able to work on a book and focus on that work. And all of these, all of these kind of programs that we have here have the same goal, that is building community. So we know that translating is quite a lonely job a lot of times. So we try to take care of you and send you all the information we can and all resources to you, and also organize online meetings to talk about literature or in-person meetings in our countries. And also, of course, we have gather all these resources online for you. So we have like online databases for translators, of course, but that the publishers can use, of course, and also databases about the translated books. So you can maybe interested what is translated into Montenegro, that you can check that and see if it's interesting for your country as well. Next slide. Sorry, and yeah, you can find here all the information about our services and our grants that we have for each of us, and here what the Institut Ramon Llull does for translators. And yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Julià. I'm going to move straight to our next speaker, but if there's time at the end, we'll take some questions. So our next speaker is Martin Krafl, and Martin Krafl is a head coordinator at the Czech Literary Centre. He's previously been and probably still is, a cultural manager, a diplomat, a moderator, a journalist, and a spokesman. Actually, all those that entire skill set is needed in the job he's doing at the moment. And Czechia, as many of you know, is going to be the guest of honour at the Frankfurt Book Fair in 2026. So he's a busy man. I'll pass the floor to Martin Krafl.
Ahoy! Thank you very much
Ahoy.
for the invitation. I hope you know ahoy, you know, that's the way how we say hi. Well, so many numbers, so many presentations, and I'm missing sometimes the discussion. So I thought myself I will do not a presentation, you will not see any numbers, so please try to listen to me. Usually I speak in German, in a language of my grandparents, and that will be easy, and we will fall in sleep. So I think when I start in English, you will think sometimes what he is talking about, and that's the point. So give me a sign if you don't understand, please, because you are the translators and you are perfect, and I'm not. If I would like to introduce our work, it will be very easy, because I will take the presentation of Julià and I will just give another numbers there, because we do the same what you heard. That's the ENLIT family. And probably you noticed that was the shortest presentation at this meeting, because we know, the time, we don't have time, we always in pressure, and we try to meet, and we try to exchange our know-how and knowledge and do the best for all members of the book market. If you are thinking about collecting data, I'm always looking to my colleagues, talking about business, about money, about licenses. And I want to give you another perspective. I'm working on behalf of the Ministry of the Czech Culture. So I'm a culture diplomat. I have a team of great people, but we are always responding our work to the Ministry of Culture. And they don't want to hear the real business numbers, They have just a different point of view. The first one is political strategy. There are some territoria in the world, and they are important for them. So we always need to talk to them, okay, for you, next 5 years is important to be, like Czechia, visible in the Europe. So we need to support the translation to the languages of Europe, because without translations, we couldn't work. So this is much more important, like telling them we will sell 100 books and we will have millions of euros for that, for the book market. That would not work. So you can see there are many perspectives in this agenda. And working for the state means sometimes to have this privilege, to have a lot of money, but you have also a big responsibility, because the politicians, they always want to hear it wasn't so expensive and everything was fine, and we are now, everywhere in Europe. And you remember my question last time, what's my problem? The politics changed. And we don't. We are staying in this business. and I'm meeting at the book fairs the politicians, Minister of Cultures, etc. And they always listen to us, what we are doing, they see those presentations, and then is coming this, wow, why I don't know about it. I never heard about it. So when I'm reading this book, right, oh my God, the literary translation, the distribution, the booksellers, wow. And that's it, you know. Would you have some book for my children? You give them the book, and that's it. And after 3 months, I will meet this politician again, and that's really happened, and I will hear, Martin, is it true we are the guest of honor in Frankfurt? And I said, yes. Oh my God, but it's September and it's October, right? And I say, 26, no 24. All right, everything's all right, isn't it? So this is the reality for us, you know. So collecting data for the ministry, it's a little bit different job as collecting data for the business. What we try to do is, as a small language, we are happy when we stay with our publishers, we are happy when we stay with our literary translators, because asking them, is the business good? Did you make a lot of money with Czech language and with the translation of the Czech author is sometimes difficult to hear because they don't tell us. You know, the publishers just don't share those numbers with us. And I'm always thinking why, but we have some ways how to figure out. So for example, in the last, let's say 2 years, we changed the policy to talking to them because they want to have money, you know, they want to support your work, they want to support the literary translation, they want to support a nice book, nice printing, nice style, design, etc. And then, of course, the distribution and the selling of the books. But 2019, we were guest of honor in Leipzig, and we were so proud because we had 80 new books on the German-speaking market. And then we contacted the strongest, biggest publishing houses, and we told them, so, we are bringing the authors to Leipzig, what we will do. And you know what was the answer? The small independent publishers told us, oh, okay, we are ready to do something, but we don't have money as usually. That's fine. But we had also these big publishing houses. And the answer was, oh, Mr. Krafl, this is your job. You know, we publish one book for you because you are the guest of honor. And now you have to do something with those books and with those authors. So we are not happy about this policy and we change it right now. And we said that for Frankfurt 26, each publisher has to give a written notice, I'm ready to participate on all events with your authors. Because if he doesn't, then the author will be not coming, and probably the translator also, sorry about that, to Frankfurt, you know. What I'm trying to say is that we, more than business data, we try to understand all figures, all members of the book market, all important people who are dealing with this job. And I'm quite happy that we have a very good cooperation with literary translators in the Czech Republic. 2 of them are here, they are wonderful. And this is Anežka Charvátová, she is translating from Spanish, French and Italian. And Hanna Foštová translating from French. Please stand up and say hello. And that's a reason why I'm doing this show, you know. Those ladies know exactly everything about the unique research which was done in the Czech Republic 2022. And that was a research about the life of the literary translators. And I have some numbers for you, but this house presentation, so if you would like to show emotions, you have to listen to me, right?
3 minutes.
Okay, so I'm talking about respondentes, but I'm talking about literary translators in the Czech Republic. So 74% of them are women. 94% of them have a university degree. More than 60% have more than 10 years experience with translating. 55% spend more than 21 hours per week with translation work. 53% of them have translated more than 5 books, and 89% of them are translating fiction. So that's the statistic. And now about the financial life of them. You're laughing. You don't know what is coming and you are laughing. I thought you will be sad. Half of translators who translate more than 40 hours per week earn more than 30,000 Czech crowns, and it is 1,200 euros. So you translate more than 40 hours per week and you get a little bit more than 1,200 euros. 50% of them in less than 10,000 crowns, which is 400 euro per month. 42% of them have a constant income from translation, but 80% of translators in the Czech Republic supplement their translation work with other job. So I appreciate your work very much, and now you are not laughing, and this is the reality. And the Czech Literary Center and the team of the Moravian Library and the Ministry of Culture in the Czech Republic we all hope that the project, like being guest of honor in Frankfurt, help to these things. If you like to know more about this research, contact please Hannah and Aneshka. So I think that's for now. So, thank you. I knew I forgot something. You know, this is so important. You know, we are guest of honor in Frankfurt, like Czechia. You know, this is something what, for example, my Spanish colleagues, not Catalan, but my Spanish colleagues were wondering about, like telling me, you are playing with the name of the Republic. And I said, playing with the name? Can you say Česko in German? Czechian. And I said, you see, in English it's Czechia. I see. So that's the first surprise. But why I'm talking about, this is the bid book, you know, this is the bid book, and we won this competition. And this bid book is online on the Czech Literary Center website. And if you would like to know more about the Czech book market, this is the best solution to read. You know, this book has all numbers, because if you are in the competition for the Frankfurter Buchmesse, you have to collect data from your colleagues. So that was a huge award, and we are very proud of it. That's what I wanted to say.
Thank you very much, Martin. Sobering statistics indeed. Let's move on now to somebody else who plays a key role in the book chain. Íñigo Cebollada is a literary agent at the UTE Körner Literary Agency. It's an agency based in Barcelona. He began his work as an intern in the summer of 2006, and it's lovely to see interns who grow into jobs in the places where they start work. So I'm looking forward to hearing what Íñigo Cebollada has to say about the role of the literary agent in the book chain and data collection.
Thank you, Sinéad. Buenos días. Good morning, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank both CEATL and our colleagues from Ramon Llull Institute for inviting me to participate in this panel. I am Íñigo Cebollada, and I work as a literary agent at the UTE Körner's agency, based in Barcelona, Spain. I was also the director of ADAL until January 24. ADAL is the Association of Literary Agencies from Spain. We count currently with 17 agencies, and our general focus is to represent the common interest of its members, as well as to promote and protect the literary agent's work. So I'm here to explain briefly, what does a literary agent do and what is the relationship between agents and translators. The work of a literary agent is often forgotten, misunderstood, or just unknown. However, agents are a fundamental part of the book chain and the foreign rights sales. With our help, books can travel, and therefore books can be translated. Our main activities are basically two: the exclusive representation of publishers, agencies, and foreign content creators for specific territories, in our case, Spain, Portugal, Latin America, and Brazil. And on the other hand, we represent national and international authors from different territories worldwide. In the opening ceremony on Tuesday, the Bulgarian writer Gospodinov, winner of the International Booker Prize 23, talked about the empathy between the authors and the translators. And I can't agree more, since as an agent, we're also very often in the middle, discussing, sometimes also fighting, between authors and editors. Empathy is one of the tools of the literary agents, together with patience and perseverance. We're fully aware of the type of books published by each publisher, so we know what to offer and to whom, bearing in mind also the fast-changing market trends. So, we first evaluate the manuscript. If we see potential, we try to work on it together with the author, and we submit it to the publisher we believe might be the best fit for his editorial line. Always also thinking about the potential international chances it could have to be translated abroad. That is the main role of the literary agent in bringing work across European borders. Regarding the translators, when we close a foreign rights sale, it is in most cases the publisher who decides what translator is the most suitable for translating the work. However, in some cases, agents do have a good relationship with translators and scouts, and we both work as prescribers, discussing about certain books and recommending possible titles to our editors. So even though the editor has the final word, agents could support translators in that way by recommending books to the editors. We are totally aware of the important job they do adapting the books to the readers of each different country, and the big issues and challenges this entails, as we saw yesterday, for example, in the workshop Translating Children's and YA Books with Simona and Lara. Another way to support translators is working hand in hand with the cultural institutions of our country and be able to share some translators' names and recommend them to our editors when closing a rights deal. In order to do so, I would like to highlight the importance of the translation grants for the literary agencies, and especially the English samples that opens us many more doors when it comes to evaluate our Spanish authors. We're very, very lucky to have such a linguistic richness in Spain, where books can be translated in 4 different co-official languages: Spanish, Catalan, Galician, and Basque. And we, as agents, would love to see them travel all around the world with the fantastic contribution of the translators. Thank you so much. Gracias.
Thank you, Enrico. Enrico, do you think literary agents get a bad name? They're often seen as the sharks in the business.
Yes, that's why also I'm here, just to just to let you all know that, of course, there are bad literary agents, but they're not the majority of them.
Also, culturally, there are countries where there are far more literary agents, and then countries like France where there are almost none. Do you think there should be more literary agents in the world?
Well, if you see...
You will say yes, won't you?
I think we do, as I said, we do as prescribers, as filters, so we help editors and translators. We help stories to travel, so I think the position of the literary agent is very, very important. But there are still a lot, and I hope there will be also more. I have some data just from the, for example, in the last Frankfurter Buchmesse, there were 324 agencies that were attending, which is a lot. So I think it's an important job that should be there.
Thank you, Rita. I always ask you the hard questions. I have to say, in my own professional experience, many literary agents are actually honest brokers. just to set the record straight. We're going to move on now to our next speaker, Nicolas Roche. Nicolas Roche has more than 30 years' experience in publishing. He's the Director General of the Bureau International de l'Édition Française, the BIEF, and he was previously the CEO of the Centre Pompidou publishing wing, and he's also worked in Gallimard Jeunesse and several publishing houses, including Retz, Nathan, Magnard, Ribert, Plomb, Perrin, and Édition Stock. So you sound as though you've been in the business almost as long as I have.
Yeah.
Je passe la parole à Nicolas Roche.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. And since we're talking about translating here today, I would also like to talk about interpreting and to thank the people in the booths at the back. Thank you. I love it when my speeches begin with applause. That's very nice. I hope it will be the same at the end. So the French always like to do things differently in their own way. So even though I have the highest respect for the first presenters, I don't have a PowerPoint presentation myself. And that's the only common point I have with the previous speaker. I believe that PowerPoint is an impoverishment, and it is to visual arts what AI is to translation. So why am I here? Well, I am at the head of an association that aims at giving tools to French publishers. We are an organization that is 150 years old. We celebrated our anniversary last year. And we do three things. We steer the French stands abroad in big book fairs like Frankfurt, and we're lucky enough to have the biggest booth at the Frankfurt Book Fair. And we organize a great deal of meetings in France and abroad with the various stakeholders of the book world in order to facilitate the translation of French books abroad. And a third thing we do is that we put out a lot of documentation on the world book markets for people who work in publishing houses on these international issues. So people who are in charge of foreign rights, export, and publishers themselves who just want to know what is going on across the world and who hope to be able to spot in our studies the trends of the publishing world. In France, we're quite lucky, and this has been said before in many of the slides, luckily produced by others, concerning the data of French publishing abroad. France means around 15,000 contracts every year between co-editions and publishing agreements worldwide. So it's the second most translated language in the world after English. And in some European markets that have very strong internal markets, the number of French translations is quite considerable. The first market for French publishers are the Spanish market. This has been said, the neighboring markets and the European markets are obviously very important. This is the case for the Spanish language, Italian language, the German language, but there are other markets where French authors are very present. Thinking of China, which is a country that buys a lot of licenses from Western publishers, especially children's books, handbooks. And there we're looking at other markets like Korea and Taiwan, and many markets that are not so frequently talked talked about and yet are very important and look at French production with great interest. I'm thinking of Poland, Greece, Turkey. I'd like to establish the link between raw data, which may not mean much. I mean, we sell more than the Italians or the Germans is nice, but it's not an end in itself. And I'd like to connect that to the issues that are being dealt with today during this conference on translating. I'd like to touch on the role of translators in order to reach these figures, to achieve these figures. And obviously, the role of translators is crucial. I'd like to tell you a little about what we do for translators and also share some concerns. Among the various programs we have in our conferences, our gatherings, they are what we have called fellowship programs in French. And if there are any volunteers to help us find a better French equivalent for fellowship, you're welcome. And we inaugurated a translating fellowship a couple of years ago, translating from French into foreign languages, translators who are located abroad. Why? Why do we do that? Well, first of all, we want to show support. We want to show them we are there by their side to enhance the role of the translator. And when they come to Paris, we put them in touch with institutional partners, because we're lucky in France. Literary translation is still better remunerated than elsewhere. Last week I was in Hungary for the Budapest Fair, where France was the guest of honor, and in France the pages paid around 23 euros, and in Hungary, well, the calculation isn't quite the same, but for a page we're looking at 5 euros. 5 euros per page. So I'm not even talking about the situation in other countries where it must be even lower. In France, we are lucky, we are fortunate to have a percentage on sales for the translator, which is not necessarily the case elsewhere. We have another program which is 25 years old already, the Georges Arthur Goldschmidt program. Some of you may know it. He's a translator of German origin who lives in France and who's 96. I think he's a very well-known translator, and he translated many German books into French, Kafka, Handke, many others. Anyway, this scheme is aimed at young Franco-German translators. So we have partnerships with some of the people here today. Hello, yes. And we realized that after a few years, we were training more translators than was a need for on the French scene. So what we decided to do is to shake things up slightly and to try and follow translators' careers, to make sure they are in touch with publishing houses, with publishers, and make sure that the people who had been trained received the necessary support and actually got more work. For some languages, as is the case for German, there is a mismatch between the number of translators and the reality of the market. Whereas in France, we're a very open market. And this has been said before. In the United States, for instance, they're very protectionist, we know that. They're very autarkic, even when you talk to them. They're very self-sufficient, and they tend to translate about 3% of their local translation. In France, we have a much more open market because we're looking at 18% of new publications who are translated works, So and this is not only manga and graphic novels, although we are the second world market for manga outside of Japan. So what we do is a little different. I'd like to hark back to the panel we had about artificial intelligence this morning. On some foreign markets, I mentioned China, we have aging translators, not to say old translators, and we have a problem of fostering the new generations. And first of all, this means learning French in some part of the world, and not only in Africa, where the French got recently kicked out, but in other regions of the world. French is losing ground. It is no longer being taught, it's no longer being learned. And this is a major issue. How can we motivate new generations of translators to learn French?
that allow translators to travel and to go to residencies, for instance, to spend the time in residencies and work there, and network and meet other colleagues or authors. And this is all very important for our work. It's very inspirational for our creativity, for a good quality of our work. And also to go to book fairs, because as Nicolas said, we are also doing an important job of scouting and of finding good books to publish in our own country. And so this is really important. But traveling is expensive. To go to book fair is expensive, and especially for literary translators who are not earning a lot of money, as we know. And so also mobility grants are really important. And a good practice would be, this is a note I had in my presentation, a good practice would be for public funders to include fair remunerations and as a condition for awarding grants to publishers, as do some others, like Centre National du Livre is doing this, or Deutsche Übersetzerfund, or Pro Helvetia, for instance, and to promote also the visibility of translators. For instance, naming translators on the cover as the European, as the title of a European translator we have been discussing about in the last day said. So it is vital to mobilize institutions in the grant system to work and network both with each other and with translators associations for a publishing ecosystem which is fair to all. So thank you.
Thank you, Francesca. Grazie mille.
Grazie.
We actually have managed somehow, I'm not quite sure how, to have 10 minutes for questions. Thank you all for being so careful with your time. Are there any questions? Would anyone like to make a comment? The lady in the front there.
Need a mic. Please, would the speaker put the mic on? Oh, yes.
Data.
Thank you.
Had a wonderful picture of the data of the Europe. I wonder if you started or did any gathering of the data concerning sanction towards Russia. I know that some of the that there is an issue going on the book market. I know my colleagues translating from Russian, they have problems with having a job because the Russian literature is not that much translated nowadays as it was before. And the other way around, do you do your members in ENLIT still support translations into Russia and for that reason also Belarus? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. It's a difficult one. But we don't have data about that, but we have discussed that several times in our meetings in Frankfurt and in other places. Some of our institutions decide not to give grants to Russia, that's true. Some others doesn't. And some others cannot anymore because of our procedure, for example, we cannot pay to a Russian bank. So there are these different situations. There is not an official position in ENLIT the whole together. Yeah.
Alors, nous, on a un peu de données sur...
We do have some data of translations from French into Russian. Let us be clear. The publishing houses choose whether or not they wish to continue to sell rights on Russian authors. So they choose the publishers. So we've seen that there has been a drop in the translations in 2022. The translation of French into Russian is 480 contracts for 2023. So the figure has increased for some groups, but some of the independent groups, some of them have chosen not to negotiate copyrights with Russian publishing houses for the reasons you can imagine. And we have seen that there is a slight increase in the numbers. I can only speak from this side. For those who do have data, thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, yes, Cécile.
Haven't got a mic yet. Sorry, we can't translate because we can't hear. Thank you. It's got to be read. No, it's... Yes, that's got to be read. It isn't a question. It isn't a trick question, but I wondered for all of... Do you have a magic wand, please? What could help you in your work, and what could, in one fell swoop, increase the circulation of works in Europe? Because what should we spend? What should we devote our next meeting to? What could we do?
Je veux pas monopoliser la...
Well, I don't want to monopolize the floor, but if I did have a magic wand, what I would do would be to make sure that we got public support, public grants to spend on acquiring rights, because if there's huge amounts being spent on thick volumes in social sector, so that you should be as lucky as we have in France, where we have a national centre for books. We've got the Ministry of Culture, the Ministry for Europe and Foreign Affairs, which are putting forward programs, which mean that we've got the 18% link. But sometimes other countries don't do as well because they're not on a winning streak, where sometimes people cut down on translation costs of the cost of bringing an author for a tour, a book tour. So sometimes they may be the first items on a budget which are cut. So I think that in Europe and in the world, the circulation of books is something that we really need to encourage. Martin?
Yes.
No, because there was a question. So.
Yes, you.
I think the question is to everyone. So.
Okay, so for me, I think I would need more colleagues, because the Czech Literary Center is, there are 5 of us, and there should be 12 of us. And interesting thing is we get enough money for our activities, and we are offering to have even more, you know. And my answer is, no, I can't do it, because I don't have the staff. I don't have the professional colleagues, so we can't deal with this money. So this is the biggest problem. And regarding the public financial resources, I would like to say very shortly something. You know, we are doing this Guest of Honor project, and as you can read in the bid book, it will cost us in 3 years 8 million euros. And sometimes I think, wow, what amount of money. And some colleagues, some translators, some publishers are telling to me, wow, this is great, but will it help us? Wouldn't be it different when you, Czech Literary Center, would have those money, you know, 8 million euros, and you will just say what we do. We will transfer this money to publishers, to you, to translators, etc. And I always say, of course, yes, yeah, that will be wonderful. But we, as a Czech Literary Center, will never get this money, you know. So you have to have those biggest projects like being a guest of honor or doing a big festival, and sometimes you think, does it make sense? But you have to think about it, you support a lot of creative industry. This is not only about the translation, this is not only about writing the book, this is also about everything that is around.
Since nobody else is jumping in, there's a lady there at number 43, yes? Oh, I'm sorry. One moment. I'll come to you in one moment. Enrico.
If I had this magic wand, really magic, this baguette magique, which, sorry, to me it sounds always like a super sandwich. Like, it must be really good, but if I had that, I would convince everyone in the world to become curious about the culture and the literature of the other countries near and far. Because then where there's demand, the offer will come, and then there will be many more books published, and many more translators with a job, and many more authors with a job, and many more publishers happy. And also, if we read more books from ours, but from other countries, it'll be a hell of a better world.
So very quickly, Madame.
Voilà. Je reviens à l'idée excellente.
Coming back to Francesca's idea, who was saying that there should be more subsidies given to the publishers who could therefore spend money on literary translation. So more money for the publishers. Was that what you said? Sorry, we can't hear this, which is off mic.
Voilà.
Yes, well, you were suggesting that more subsidies, grants, should be given to the publishers, who therefore indirectly will help promote literary translation. I think that's what you were saying. So I'm going to be the naughty boy, really, because I think that I'm going to say that there is a real danger, which is, so if I was part of a jury of experts with Jürgen to sort out the publishers and houses to which subsidies were granted, and publishers established double contracts, particularly in Bulgaria, where this was almost standard practice. So I don't know if things have chosen. In other words, the publishers kept a lot of the money themselves. So I think that this was the situation about 10 years ago, but the European Commission carried out very severe checks. And I hope that this will continue to do so, because that seems to be quite a lot. I'm terribly sorry to give you bad news, but yes, it's perfectly true. This is what I wanted to say just now when I say there are some institutions which give support, not institutions, that provide institutions to the translators directly and not via the publishers, because that's the difference. In other countries, what you've just said also happens as well. So we are not in a good position with regard to all that. As you were saying just now, as far as monetary support is concerned, if we don't get the monetary support, well, we're not in a very good position. And the literary translators will be in a very even worse position.
Maintenant, je parle pour l'Institut.
I'm speaking for our situation. We do give support to the publishing houses, but we are told that the money does go to the translators.
Sorry for that. Just to be sure that you receive the money, we ask for the proof of payment and the invoice. So we ask for the payment, the bank transfer to you. That we ask for that. Of course, that's as far as we can get to be sure that the money that we give to them is come to you. But I guess there is some, I don't know, somebody is still lying about it. But as much as we know, our money, as institutional money, goes to the translator through the publisher.
So, a political party in Ireland some years ago had a catchphrase, a lot done, a lot more to do. And I think in the case of grants, literary translation, the mobility of the book, and data collection, it's a fairly apposite quote to apply. Thank you all for your attention. Thank you to our speakers.